Welcome back to NewZeroland. I just saw that I crossed over 10,000 kilometers on the Energica Ego, and I've had it about a year now, so let's talk about how that year's been.
Okay, here's the thing about test rides. You get on the bike, you ride around for like 20 minutes, and you try your best to get a feel for what the bike is about. Back in 2018, I did exactly that on a 2017 Energica Ego. And my first impression was, wow, it's heavy, and wow, it's fancy, and oh my god, the power! Because at the time it didn't have traction control, so I was getting wheel spin on the freeway. But you can't just test ride a bike and know what it's like, because there's so much more beyond what it feels like to ride. What's the maintenance like? What's it like to charge at home overnight? How many fast charges can you do in a day before the battery heats up? Which regen setting do you like the most? Especially if this is your first experience with electric motorcycles, it's a whole lifestyle change. And you have to actually buy one and live with it for a while to find out what it's really like. It's kind of like traveling. Let's say you go to Japan, you spend like a week there, take all the trains around, see all the sights. Just dip your toe in the water. You get a taste of what the country is like. But obviously there's so much more than you can see in a week. If you actually move there and live there for a while and make friends with the locals and have like a favorite restaurant or something, or you get a car and learn how to drive there and, get lost on the weekends, you have these experiences that become lifelong memories. And then you can come back and say you know what Japan is like. So now, after a year of owning this bike, I can tell you what it's like. I've split this video up into 6 sections, so feel free to skip around to what you want to know about. First on the list is power. It's crazy. I can tell you, a year later, the acceleration is still exciting. This is the fastest bike I've owned, and the sound is insane. If anybody thinks electric motorcycles are boring, they're riding the wrong bike. The only problem is you don't hit peak horsepower until after breaking the speed limit. So the 0 to 60 is still in the low 3 seconds, and then the power comes on and it feels like a turbo kicks in. It's still not a liter bike though. I know it makes almost double the torque of an R1, but it doesn't have the horsepower. I mean, most liter bikes have over 200 horsepower these days, and the Ego has 143. 132 at the wheel, so if you're comparing it to a gas bike, it's closer to a 750. So if you were expecting it to beat a Panigale, it won't, but I think the appeal with electrics is the way the power comes on. It's smooth, instant, and predictable. Nothing like a Panigale. And the adjustable regen is just so good. Like, crank it all the way up and you don't have to touch the brakes at all. It's like pushing forward on a joystick to go faster and then rolling back to slow down. The Energica's throttle is so smooth, it's hard to compare it to anything else, gas or electric. They say turning regen all the way off and coasting gets you better range, but it just feels weird to ride that way. I don't know, everybody's different. I really like regen, and the ability to ride just with the throttle and not touch the brakes is amazing. I've tried all the regen levels, and I just leave it on level 2. That's kind of my preference. That amount of deceleration when you let off the throttle is closest to a gas bike. About the weight, I feel like this is the elephant in the room with Energica. Everybody knows they're heavy, and I have to say, after a year of riding it, the weight still bugs me. I mean, this thing is 286 kilos. Jen can't even lift it, and that bugs me too because it's not a bike we can both ride. I think the perception of weight has a lot to do with the ergonomics. And don't get me wrong, I think the riding position is perfect. It just makes the bike feel a lot heavier because the bars are low and you don't have as much leverage to throw it around. All this to say, there's a reason why Energica made their newer bikes lighter. On the track though, it felt amazing. I mean, this is a race bike for racers. Really, on any smooth roads at high speed, the bike is fantastic and it feels really stable and the weight goes away. On tight twisty roads though, it's a handful. And I know a lot of Energica owners who don't think they're heavy, but they're not riding like this, on roads like this. It takes serious skill to do this, and this is not me riding. It's taken me a year to learn how to ride it and feel confident on it, and I'm still nowhere near good enough. Range-wise, I have the smaller battery, so I'm kinda all over the place. Around town I can do about 180 Ks. On the highway, between 110 and 120. More if you tuck. And at the racetrack, maybe 45. So it really depends on how fast you're going, and you can play with this as you ride. On road trips I usually ride in rain mode because that makes the throttle smoother so your variation in speed doesn't change as quickly. You can even turn on cruise control if you want. I never thought I'd like cruise control on a motorcycle, but that's also a huge help on trips because if you're holding a constant speed, your range estimate on the dash is also constant. So if you need to go a little bit further, you can adjust your speed and see what kind of difference that makes to your range instantly with cruise control. Like I said, I have the smaller 13.4 kilowatt hour battery, so it isn't the new 21.5 bike, which is a whole nother thing. It means my bike is heavier because the first gen battery was built like a tank. It has this huge case protecting the cells, basically making it impenetrable to rockets. But that meant there wasn't that much space for more cells, so I don't get nearly as much range as the new ones. It seems like whatever range I'm getting in kilometers, they're getting in miles. However, the bigger batteries obviously take longer to charge because they're bigger, and if you're doing fast charges, they heat up quicker. One day, I decided to take this bike over 700 kilometers to get Taco Bell. If you haven't seen that video, check it out, it's pretty fun. And on that trip, I did 10 back-to-back DC fast charges, and the battery didn't care. It just kept charging at full power. Some people think these smaller batteries could go further in a day than the new ones. And that leads me to charging. I feel like the biggest difference with an electric motorcycle, lifestyle-wise, is charging. Because 90% of the time you charge at home. And that's one thing you can't compare to a gas bike, because with gas, you always have to go to a station to get your fuel. It's not like you have a gas pump at home. And at the moment, people are trying to find solutions to this whole pollution problem. Pollution solutions, like Ducati wants to get in on Porsche's synthetic fuel thing so that they can keep building engines. And that's cool, maybe Ducati's engines will run better. But that still means you have to go out to a station to fill up. There's still nothing like unplugging your bike in the morning with a full charge. My Zero could already do that, so I'm kinda used to it. But the Energica is my first bike that can DC charge. Suddenly, crazy long distance rides were easy. I've made a lot of videos on that, so check them out if you want. I tested it out, and a full charge at a DC station takes 30 minutes. In my experience, most of my charging stops were between 15 and 20 minutes because you never get to a station on zero, and usually you unplug at 80%. Some stops have been 10 minutes if I just needed to top up. That kind of charging speed has been a game changer because even though my battery doesn't have much range, I don't think about it anymore because I can get back on the road so quickly. Fit and finish, build quality, whatever you want to call it. Well, it's Italian, so it's the best. Everything is carbon fiber. Everything feels premium, It's a lot of money, but you get what you pay for. I felt this way when I got it, and I feel this way even more now. All the components on this bike come from companies that are the best at what they do. Like Brembo brakes, heard of them? Of course you have, they're the best. Did I mention all the carbon fiber? It's freaking everywhere. And just the feeling of being on it, the view while you're riding it. There isn't any other electric motorcycle with a cockpit that looks this cool, and it still impresses me every time I see it. Next up, repairs, maintenance, and Energica as a company. Having an accident tells you a lot about all those things. When I dropped my bike, twice, I had to take everything apart and order new pieces. But that gave me a reason to find out how everything was designed and how things fit together. This bike is a work of art, even under the fairings, and all the fairing pieces slot together perfectly. I will say, maintenance is a bit more involved in my Zero, but still way less than a gas bike. You have coolant, you have oil changes, and you have to lube the chain, but that's pretty much it. I still hate lubing chains, it's so messy, but I will say adjusting it is a whole lot easier than aligning the Zero's belt. I didn't want to bring up Zero in this video, but it's the only other electric motorcycle I've had, and my interaction with the company is worth comparing. If you need replacement parts from Zero, first off, Zero doesn't want you changing those parts yourself, so they won't sell you anything directly. Not even rich rebuilds could get parts from Zero.
Unfortunately, Zero Motors won't sell us a motor directly. You have to
Then
wait.
we return our calls.
You won't return our calls.
You can only get parts from a Zero dealer, which is a whole nother mess because they're only authorized to sell you the part if they install it. Well, that's totally fine for most people, but I'm in a unique position on the other side of the world where there aren't any dealers. So I need parts to be shipped, and I need to be able to work on the bike myself. This is where Energica has blown my mind. Need parts? No problem. Need detailed instructions on how to change a water pump or do an oil change? Here's a super long email with step-by-step directions and torque specs. And the company itself has this family feel that's gotten stronger over the past year. Stefano, Lawrence, Chris, you guys are awesome, and every Energica owner in the US feels the same. Like my buddy Pinero says, I can give my money to anyone, but buying customer service is more important than buying a product. Owning an Energica is bigger than just riding a bike. It's the community. It's making friends with all the owners online. It's following their journeys and sharing some of your own. It's the heritage in Italy. It's Moto E. I bought a bike from a freaking race team, and that's something I feel every day when I ride it. So yeah, after a year of riding this bike, it's not perfect. It could be lighter, it could have more range, It could be a newer Energica that solves all those problems, but this past year has been one of the best in my motorcycle riding life, and I'm so glad I bought this thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.